Revealed, when the devil can't destroy you, he sends a narcissist discover divine transformation. In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, the word of the Lord came unto Samuel, saying, How long wilt thou mourn for Saul, seeing I have rejected him? God's touch was upon David, a shepherd boy who had slain the giant Goliath with but a sling and 5 smooth stones. With a roar of faith louder than thunder, David triumphed, and in the shadow of the battlefield, a new story began to unfold. The echoes of victory rang through the hills of Judea, for the Lord had elevated him, anointing him to be the future king of Israel. Yet, with this divine favor, the air thickened with envy as King Saul's heart festered. Once, David had strummed sweet melodies in the palace, calming the tumult of Saul's spirit. Now, under that same roof, the chords turned sour as whispers spun tales of a rising star. Gladiatorial chants filled the streets, Saul hath slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s, gnawing at the edges of Saul's sanity. The king's eyes, once warm with admiration, now gleamed with icy malice. Betrayal birthed despair, and under the weight of his mentor's animosity, David fled to the wilderness. The stark terrain of Adullam, filled with dark caves, mirrored his anguish. In the somber embrace of stone and shadow, he gathered misfits and distressed souls, threading hope through their rugged lives. Together, they learned to cling to the Almighty, praising Him even in despair. David's spirit rekindled as he transformed these weary hearts into a band of mighty warriors. Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select all notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. Despite the sanctuary of the caves, the specter of Saul's pursuit loomed ever closer. It was in the dark embrace of one such cave that destiny lay in wait. Saul, oblivious to the divine web woven around him, sought solace from his own fears. Entering the cavern, he became a target of David's anguish. There lay the opportunity, the chance to drive a dagger into Saul's reign. Yet, a still, small voice spoke louder than his desires for vengeance. The weight of God's anointed broke through the temptation of revenge. With trembling hands, David chose mercy. He stealthily severed a piece from Saul's robe, a testament of restraint. In that moment, the power of divine love triumphed over hatred. Despite the burning flame of betrayal, he held fast to the promises of the Lord. But how long could patience endure when shadows of a crown danced in the periphery and hate threatened to extinguish hope? As whispers of destiny intertwined with David's prayers, the profound mystery of God's sovereign plan loomed ever larger. David ventured back into the wilderness, yearning for a promise that, while obscured, shone with the light of expectancy, waiting for the day it would be fulfilled. And it came to pass, as David dwelt in the wilderness, that word of Saul's relentless pursuit reached his ears like a mournful dirge. David's heart trembled within him, for the shadows of mistrust and fear loomed ever larger with each dawn. Yet, in that desolate land, the Spirit of the Lord urged him onward, instilling in him a courage born not of man but of divine promise. A band of warriors rallied around him, men courageous and tried by hardship, their eyes catching the glimmer of hope ignited by David's faith. Each day they sought the Lord, their voices lifted in prayer, echoing off the barren rocks. David became more than a leader, he was a shepherd unto his people, guiding them through tempests both physical and spiritual. One fateful afternoon, while the sun hung low over the hills, a messenger from the city burst into their camp, breathless with urgency. The Philistines have raided the Negev, and your hometown of Ziklag is in danger. The news struck David's heart like a thunderous blow. He stood fast, his countenance unwavering even as dread threatened to spill forth. Men, we shall not flee. We shall deliver our home. He declared, his voice steady as the ancient oaks. United in purpose, they set forth, hearts emboldened by their loyalty to one another and the love of their Lord. As they approached Ziklag, they saw the devastation wrought by the enemy. Their village burned, their wives and children taken captive. A great sorrow fell upon David and his men, they wept until they could weep no more, their grief a palpable weight pressing upon the air. In that darkness, despair whispered temptations of betrayal and blame, but David, in his anguish, sought the face of the Lord. He fell to his knees, a humble servant longing for guidance. O Lord, shall I pursue this raiding party? Shall I overtake them? And the Lord answered him, Pursue them, for thou shalt surely overtake them and rescue the captives. Strengthened by these words, David rose, a fire ignited within him, and spurred on his warriors. With the swiftness of eagles, they charged into the night, relentless in their pursuit. Daylight broke as they chased the shadows of the Philistines. In the heart of a valley, they stumbled upon an Egyptian, weak and dying, one who had slipped through the enemy's lines. To whom do you belong? David inquired. I am a servant to a Philistine, abandoned in the desert. I can guide you to their camp, the man gasped, trusting in God's providence. David took him in. The man led them to the very heart of the enemy encampment, where the Philistines feasted in revelry over their spoils. Unleashing the hand of the Almighty, David and his warriors descended upon them with the fury of the righteous, reclaiming their lost families. With victory won, jubilation filled the air, and the captives were restored to their kin. All rejoiced, and together they offered sacrifices unto the Lord, acknowledging his hand in their triumph. Yet unbeknownst to David, the echoes of his actions reverberated further than he could see, as God, in his sovereign power, wove a tapestry beyond comprehension. For he was preparing a throne, not just of a king in Israel, but teeming with the promise of future generations that would arise from David's lineage. In the coolest shade of a palm tree, as they rested in their newfound peace, David sensed there was more to this journey of faith, a deeper mystery yet to be unveiled, a calling that would extend far beyond his own understanding. How the plan of God was astonishingly grander than even the heart of the shepherd could fathom. Indeed, what lay ahead was not just for the moment, but for the ages to come. And it came to pass that David and his men returned to Ziklag, their hearts soaring with gratitude and relief. The sun shone brightly upon the ruins of their home, illuminating not only the burned structures but the scars of a battle fought valiantly. As the families reunited, tears of joy mingled with the ash of loss, for in their midst, hope was rekindled. Yet, even amid this celebration, a shadow began to gather upon David's heart. He pondered the path that lay ahead, knowing that the bitterness of conflict lingered in the air like smoke. For it was not only the Philistines who sought to wage war against him, but also the growing discontent lurking among some of his own men. Their grief had morphed into suspicion, and whispers flitted through the camp like a raven's wings. David, one of his warriors, spoke, his brow furrowed with doubt. Why do we remain in Ziklag? Saul seeks to destroy us. Would it not be better to hide among the Philistines and seek refuge until the storms pass? David turned his gaze towards the hills where the sun set ablaze in hues of crimson and gold, heavy with the weight of his own thoughts. Nay, my brother, he replied, his voice steady and firm. The Lord is our refuge and fortress, a stronghold in times of trouble. We shall not relinquish our home to fear. But within the hearts of some, seeds of discord took root. Men who had bravely followed David began to question, their loyalty waning like the waning moon. David, sensing their disquiet, persistently sought the Lord in prayer, pleading for guidance and peace in the burgeoning storm. Then, one night as David laid his head in quiet reflection, he dreamed a vision cast before him. The Lord's voice spoke gently yet resolutely, David, your heart shall be tested, and the desires of men shall rise against you. Yet know this, I am with you, even as betrayal lurks in shadows. Awakening, he felt the weight of that prophetic warning resonate in his very bones. Gathering his men, he spoke earnestly, let us not be divided. We shall seek the counsel of the Lord together. They devoted themselves to prayer and fasting, their voices raised in unified supplication. In that moment of desperation and seeking, the Spirit interceded, and clarity dawned upon David. He gathered a portion of his men, determined to consult with Ahimelech the priest, who had fled to Abiathar, the son of Ahimelech. They were the keepers of the oracle of God. Bring the ephod, David commanded, his heart trembling with sacred expectancy. The high priest came forth, bearing the sacred garments, and sought the Lord with David. "Shall I go into the land of Judah?" David asked, longing for affirmation. The Lord replied, "Go, for I have not forsaken you. Trust in my purpose." As they departed the sanctuary of Ziklag, word of Saul's treachery reached them like the biting chill of a winter wind. In the midst of their return to Judah, they would encounter both friend and foe, as the discontented began to scheme against David in secret, unknowing that God would use even this discord to usher forth his sovereign plan. With every step, David pondered the promise that had been spoken over his life, recognizing a divine orchestration even in turmoil. For the path ahead held not only trials but the splendid tapestry of God's faithfulness woven through those trials, and so it was, as David led his men toward the mountains of Judah, the tension thickened, drawing closer to the moment where the foundations of his faith would not only be tested but transformed. For he sensed an impending revelation, concerning his kingship, that would unlock the mysteries of destiny aligned with the promise of the Lord. Would he hold fast as the storm raged and the hearts of men trembled? Would he become the beacon in a time of darkness? The answers waited, cloaked in the mystery of God's perfect timing. And it came to pass that as David's company ascended into the rugged mountains, a weighty silence fell upon them. Each man wrestled with the turmoil within his heart. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows that danced upon the rocky terrain, reminiscent of the burgeoning shadow of discord amongst their ranks. Suddenly, an urgent shout pierced the stillness. "Behold! The Amalekites raid the outskirts of our homes." A scout veiled in dust and panic ran forth, his breath heavy with dread. Fear rippled through David's men, igniting the very discontent that had begun to fester in their souls. "Shall we pursue them?" one warrior implored, gripping his sword with a fierce determination. But yet another countered, "Our families need protection, David. We cannot chase phantoms while our own are vulnerable." The murmurs of demoralization grew louder, mingling with the cries of despair echoed by the remnants of burnt Ziklag. In that moment of fracture, David turned not to the clamor of men but to the ever-faithful Lord. He knelt upon the rocky ground, his brow pressed to the earth, seeking the face of God in the midst of chaos. "O Lord, my strength and shield, shall I pursue this troop? Shall I overtake them?" His heart pounded, a drum beat matched only by the tempest brewing within his camp, and the Lord answered him, saying, "Pursue, for you shall surely overtake them, and without fail recover all." With a renewed spirit coursing through him, David rose, his eyes ablaze with purpose. "Gather your strength. The Lord commands that we pursue the Amalekites. All that was taken shall be restored." His words ignited a fervor within his men, dispelling the shadows of doubt that threatened to engulf them. As they pressed forward under the fading light of day, the path grew arduous, weary bodies stumbled, spirits flickered, but David's resolve became a beacon guiding them through. They persevered through ravines and thickets, the determination of their hearts kindled anew by the assurance that came from the Lord. Yet in the midst of their quest, as they approached the brook Besor, 1/3 of their number fell back, unable to bear the weight of fatigue. Their strength waxed dim, and in their reticence, their loyalty began to wear thin. "Why should we risk our lives for those who falter?" they murmured among themselves. David, standing resolute, did not succumb to frustration. Instead, he discerned the deeper wound that had manifested among his brothers. "Let us bless those who rest. The spoils shall be shared with all," he declared, choosing unity over division. "For we are one body in pursuit of God's promise." Thus, they forged ahead, finally locating the Amalekite camp, resplendent with riches taken from both David and his people. The battle which ensued was fierce, yet with the Lord's might upon them, they triumphed decisively, reclaiming not only what was lost but more a bounty that overflowed beyond their expectations. In the aftermath, as they counted their spoils, a wave of renewed camaraderie washed over David and his men. He knew in his heart this victory was not solely a reclaiming of goods but a divine transformation, a restoration of faith, a reaffirmation of identity as God's chosen. Yet amid the rejoicing, another whisper stirred. Word had come back from Saul, who had sought to quell any threat against his throne. As David distributed the bounty among all his men, including those who had faltered, he sensed a convergence of events. For the fate of Israel hung in a delicate balance, and God's plan was unfurling with each moment. The time drew near when he would be faced with choices that could seal his destiny forever. Would he cleave to the path the Lord had laid before him, unfettered by the clamor of man? As day turned to night and victory lingered in the air, David gazed into the distance, pondering the weight of what lay ahead. For a new test awaited him, one that would reveal not only his heart but the very purpose of God's calling upon his life. The echoes of the past lingered softly in the night, waiting just as David was upon the unfolding of his sovereign reveal. And it came to pass that after the victory over the Amalekites, David returned with his men to Ziklag, their faces aglow with triumph and treasures. The spoils were a testament to the Lord's faithfulness. Every man's heart was uplifted as they embraced their families, their joy a balm for the wounds of loss. Yet, amidst the jubilation, a shadow loomed. News spread through the land that Saul, beset by panic and jealousy, had proclaimed a relentless pursuit against David. The king's heart was darkened, and his mind twisted by the fear of losing his throne. As the days passed, David could feel the weight of this impending storm, a constant reminder that the throne of Israel was not yet his, a sacred promise hanging delicately in the balance. David gathered his men once more, and in the shade of an olive tree, he shared his heart. "Brothers, we have tasted victory, and yet a greater trial approaches. As the Lord delivered our enemies into our hands, we must not forget the honor he grants us. We shall seek safety, but shall we remain hidden in fear?" The men looked at one another, resolve flickering like the last rays of the sun. One of his warriors, Abishai, spoke with fervor, "Let us confront Saul. He seeks our end, and the Lord is mighty in battle. Surely he will deliver him into our hands as he did the Amalekites." David, discerning the anxious hearts of his brothers, raised his hand to silence the chatter. "Nay, we shall not raise our hands against the Lord's anointed. Instead, let us seek counsel from the Lord, for our deliverance must come in his time, not through the blood of our brethren." With humility, he fell to his knees, imploring the Lord, "O God of Israel, guide me in this perilous hour. Shall I stay in this wilderness, hidden from Saul's rage, or shall I flee to a land where I might find tranquility?" And the Lord responded in the silence, "Go, for I shall protect you, and I will prepare a place for you among the nations. Trust in my ways, for they are higher than your own." Emboldened by divine assurance, David rallied his men, and they departed Ziklag, heading toward the wilderness of Ziph. They moved like shadows beneath the stars, each step heavy with the weight of their calling. But even as they traversed the rugged paths, whispers of betrayal encircled David. Men from the tribe of Ziph treacherously informed Saul of David's whereabouts. That I in the stillness of the night, as the moon cast its soft glow upon the dust of the earth, David sat by a fire, troubled yet resolute. His heart turned inward, grappling with the bitterness of betrayal. "O Lord, why must the wicked rise against the righteous? Is there no justice for the innocent?" Yet, in that vulnerable moment, Jonathan, the son of Saul, sought David out, undeterred by his father's wrath. He spoke words of strength, "Fear not the hand of Saul. I have come to encourage you, for your destiny shall be fulfilled. The kingdom will be yours, and I will stand with you as your ally." In this encounter, David felt a surge of hope, the promise of God making manifest in Jonathan's unwavering loyalty. Together they forged a bond, one that would transcend earthly thrones and familial ties, a covenant reflecting the deeper truth of God's faithfulness amidst trials. But just as they rejoiced in renewed vows of trust, ominous news reached their ears. Saul had come close, a veil of darkness cloaking the very hills they occupied. David's heart quickened, knowing that the moment was near for confrontation, a divine setup wherein faith and fear would contend. That in that ethereal stillness before the storm, David held tightly to his faith, grasping the promise of God that had been spoken into his life. The time was approaching when all would be revealed, divine destinies unfolding in the shadow of peril. For just as the night prepares the way for dawn, so too was God arranging the tapestry of his everlasting plan, drawing closer to the moment where faith would ignite the path before them. The question lingered, would David trust in the Lord's promises even when shadows loomed large, or would he succumb to the fear of man? And it came to pass that as David continued in the wilderness of Ziph, the news of Saul's relentless pursuit stirred the hearts of all who dwelled in that region. The fear of the anointed king seeped into the very fabric of the people, whispering doubts and painting visions of despair. Yet, David remained steadfast, trusting in the Lord's deliverance. As Saul pressed southward, he divided his forces, sending troops throughout the land in search of David. And lo, while Saul was engaged in the pursuit, unsuspecting of David's true location, a messenger from the Ziphites approached the encampment of David. This man bore tidings of treachery, fueled by the promise of reward from Saul. He spoke with forked tongue, offering to betray David further into the king's hands. Hearing these words, David's heart was heavy with sorrow. He sought refuge not in panic but in prayer, raising his voice before the Lord on behalf of his life and those of his men. O God of mercy, you know the hearts of men, and the loyalty of those in Ziph is laid bare before you. Lend me a sign of your favor, O Lord, that I may know how to traverse this treacherous path. In that hour, as the sun dipped low and shadows darkened, a spirit of wisdom fell upon him. He called for Abiathar the priest and commanded him to fetch the ephod, for David needed to inquire of the Lord. Shall I pursue the Ziphites, and will they deliver me into the hand of Saul? As the smoke of the sacrifice curled heavenward, the voice of the Lord pierced through the din of uncertainty. Pursue, for you shall surely overtake them, and you will be rescued from the hand of Saul. Thus emboldened, David gathered his 600 men, and with swift resolve, they advanced toward the land of Ziph. Meanwhile, Saul, driven by jealousy and madness, sought to lay waste to the hopes of David as if extinguishing a flickering flame. Amidst the chaos of his pursuits, he would not find peace, rather, he met disillusionment at every turn. For as David and his men drew near, they found protection in the natural barriers of the wilderness, and the Lord created confusion among Saul's ranks. At the time when David drew near to the place where Saul encamped, he found a cave, a place of refuge. And he entered therein, seeking solitude in the tumult of battle. But lo, as may be, Saul entered the very cave to relieve himself, unknowing that David and his men were hidden within. David's companions pressed upon him, saying, "This is the day of the Lord, deliverance is nigh. Rise, strike him, for the Lord has delivered him into your hand." Yet David, filled with reverence, would not harm Saul, the anointed of the Lord. Instead, he stealthily cut off a corner of Saul's robe and retreated into the shadows, torn between mercy and the justice of God's own timing. In that moment, the weight of his choice bore heavily upon him. Conviction stirred within his heart as he beheld the hem of Saul's garment. Though he pursues me with malice, I will not raise my hand against the Lord's anointed. And soon after, David emerged from the cave and called out to Saul, revealing what had been done. "My lord, why do you listen to those who say, 'David seeks your harm'? Behold, this day you see that I have done you no evil, yet you pursue me to take my life." Saul, moved by this act of kindness, felt the jealousy that consumed him begin to unravel. "Is this your voice, David? You have shown me kindness when I sought to destroy you. I know indeed that you shall be king, and the kingdom shall be established in your hand." And so, as their eyes locked, David felt a divine assurance wash over him. He realized that the path laid before him was not yet complete. As Saul returned to his abode, David stood resolute, understanding that God's ultimate purpose was far beyond the confines of such earthly struggles and conflicts, for as the heavens display the glory of the Lord, so too did David find solace in knowing that he was indeed chosen, set apart for a greater fulfillment yet to come. A divine plan was unfolding, and the depths of God's sovereignty would soon be made manifest, prompting in David the question that echoed in the chambers of the heavens: what greater purpose was entwined within the trials, and how might the heart of a king be forged in the furnace of adversity? And it came to pass that David, having witnessed the heart of Saul in that moment, felt a deep stirring within himself. As Saul turned away to return to his place, leaving the cavernous shadows, David was struck with solemn reflection. "O Lord," he prayed silently, "your ways are indeed higher than mine. How shall I walk in them? What lessons must I take forth from this encounter?" His men rallied around him, their hearts burdened yet filled with admiration. They pressed him, saying, "Shall we not take this chance? For he has sought your life. The Lord gave him into your hands, and yet you spared him. But David silenced them with a glance that spoke of reverence for the anointed of the Lord. The Lord has dealt kindly with me today, he declared, and I cannot repay good with evil. Let us depart this place and seek a refuge unknown until the danger has passed. For even the whispers of betrayal linger still, like shadows fleeing the light. So David and his 600 men journeyed further into the wilderness, weary yet fortified in spirit. With every step, David recalled the burden of leadership that was to be his. He felt the weight of the people's expectations and the calling of God upon his life. Yet, within him lay an aching fear what would become of his soul if he relinquished his integrity for the sake of survival. Meanwhile, word of the encounter had spread among the Ziphites, and they brought news to Saul of David's mercy. Enraged but stirred by an emotion he could not comprehend, Saul summoned the leaders of the Ziphites, saying, "You have betrayed me, for you stand with David. Where is he? Let the land serve as a snare, and you shall lead me to him, lest I be made a fool before my kingdom." As the Ziphites debated, seeking favor with their king, David again turned to the Lord, beseeching wisdom upon discovering the depths of treachery surrounding him. "O God, in whom shall I put my trust? Protect me from those who would do me harm, and grant me favor in your eyes." Days turned into weeks, and the wilderness became David's crucible, a place of training where dependence on God flourished. There, he encountered not only the wilderness' natural dangers but also the fears and inadequacies buried deep within his heart. The isolation pruned his spirit, revealing anger, doubt, and hope intermingled. In his solitude, he penned songs of lamentation and worship, expressing his anguish before the Lord. "Behold my tears, O God," he wrote, "for the enemy taunts me day and night, saying, Where is your God? Yet my heart shall sing your praises, for in the valley of shadows, you are my fortress." But lo, the Lord was not silent, and in the stillness, he spoke to David thrice, revealing the truths that would bind his spirit from fear and fortify his heart against despair. "You shall not fear the plots of men who seek your life. I will guard you as the apple of my eye, the anointed is protected by my hand." And so, in the quiet of the wilderness, David found himself transformed through trial. The experience molded him, shaping him for the kingdom he was to inherit, and he began to understand the vast expanse of God's plan weaving through the fabric of his trials. But as David pondered these truths, a shadow fell upon the horizon, a voice declaring, "Saul draws near, and the time for confrontation has come." With this proclamation hung heavy in the air, David's spirit wrestled with the notion of destiny. For little did he know, a greater purpose awaited him beyond the wilderness, where battles of the heart would ignite destiny's flame. For indeed, a moment of divine revelation was about to unfold, intertwining the fates of king and shepherd, setting the stage for the ultimate clash between earthly authority and divine decree. What shall become of the hearts intertwined in the trials of this journey? What celestial orchestration waits to be revealed? And it came to pass that as David and his men took refuge in the wilderness of Maon, the news of Saul's pursuit spread rapidly like wildfire through the valleys of the land. The Ziphites, ever eager to curry favor, approached Saul with news of David's south hiding place. "Behold, he is in the wilderness of Maon," they declared, their hearts filled with ambition and treachery. Saul, now consumed with rage, rallied his forces, commanding them to gather at once. "Go, seize him," he cried, "for I will not be outwitted by a shepherd. Bring me David, the son of Jesse, for he is a thorn in my side, and I shall rid myself of this curse." Meanwhile, David sought the face of the Lord, knowing the peril that loomed before him. In the stillness of the night, he raised his voice in prayer, saying, "O God of Israel, hear my plea. Safeguard me from the hand of Saul, for he seeks to extinguish the light you have kindled within me. Show me your way, for I am but a humble servant." And the Lord, in his infinite mercy, responded, bringing the spirit of prophecy upon David. "Fear not, for though the enemy encamps against you, I am your shield. Your days as king are ordained, and I shall preserve you through the fires of affliction. Behold, I am drawing near, and I shall confuse the plans of your adversaries." As dawn broke, the Ziphites guided Saul's men in pursuit, their footsteps echoing through the vast stretches of wilderness. David, acutely aware of their presence, resolved to move swiftly. He instructed his men, "Prepare for battle, for we must not allow ourselves to be cornered. Let each one take heed. We are but a remnant, yet we carry the promise of the Lord." Thus, they evaded capture, traversing the rugged terrain. The days grew long, and they found solace in the mountains, where David seized moments of reflection. His heart was laden with uncertainties but also brightened by the truths of God's covenant. In those moments, he wrote, "My soul waits in silence for God alone, from him comes my salvation. He alone is my rock and my salvation, my fortress, I shall not be shaken." Yet Saul, relentless in his pursuit, continued to draw nearer, his heart hardened against all reason. And lo, the Lord orchestrated the heavens, and as the sun began to set, a messenger approached Saul with alarming tidings, "Behold, the Philistines have invaded the land." Panic seized Saul's heart as he was torn between his desire to capture David and the pressing threat upon his kingdom. He turned sharply to his men, commanding, "Gather your ranks. We must return to face this enemy, for they are encroaching upon our territory. Leave David for now, our nation is at stake." With haste, Saul withdrew, and thus, the Lord delivered David from the grasp of the king's wrath. As the sun dipped below the horizon, David and his men emerged from their hiding, their hearts uplifted in praise. "Blessed be the Lord, for he has shielded us from the hand of the enemy," David rejoiced, lifting his voice in a song of thanks to the Almighty. "In my distress, I called upon you, and you answered me from the depths of the grave." With this divine intervention, David grasped a piece of the intricate tapestry of God's plan for his life, a plan that would intertwine his destiny with that of his enemies, a destiny woven with trials and triumphs, leading not just to a throne, but to a deeper understanding of God's faithful love. Little did David know that this deliverance was merely a chapter in a grand narrative, for the divine author continued to pen the story of a shepherd becoming a king. What greater trials awaited him? What deeper revelations of God's unfathomable character lay ahead in the wilderness? The echoes of destiny lingered in the air, waiting to unfold. And it came to pass that after David and his men emerged from their refuge, they gathered in the shade of a rock, the wilderness of Maon stretching around them, wild and untamed. The flickering hope in their hearts struggled against the fading shadows cast by the looming threat of Saul and his ambitions. "Brothers," David spoke with a voice both weary and resolute, "the Lord has delivered us today. Let us not forget that we are called by him and chosen for a purpose beyond this wilderness." His words resonated as a clarion call amid the exertion and anxiety that racked his men. In the depths of the wilderness, David took time to reflect upon the Lord's promise. He recalled how, in the days of his youth, while tending the sheep, God had called him to be a leader, not merely a king over Israel, but a shepherd of his people. With each prayer, his spirit soared, capturing the essence of longing for the divine presence. Yet trouble lurked in the distance as David continued, "We must remain vigilant. Though the danger of Saul has receded for now, we do not know what schemes the adversary has devised against us." In that very hour, even as they spoke, whispers of betrayal danced through the land. Unbeknownst to David, a deepening discord was brewing within his own ranks. A man named Doeg, an Edomite in service to Saul, had witnessed David's escape and harbored intentions unholy and treacherous. With deceitful words, he intended to gain favor with his king, setting a snare for the heart of David. Days passed, with David and his men finding hardship in the wilderness, cooking over fires and scrounging for provisions. One fateful night, as they camped beside a stream, a profound silence enveloped them, broken only by the sound of rustling leaves. David, sensing the stillness, withdrew to seek the face of the Lord beneath the starry expanse. "O Lord, my God," he said earnestly, "you are my refuge. Preserve my soul from the mire of treachery, for I stand alone, and my heart is heavy. Yet I trust in your steadfast love." As he prayed, a vision overwhelmed him, a great light illuminating the darkness, leading him to a mountain high above the valleys. There, he understood that God was calling him not merely to escape, but to rise above the trials that lay before him. Just as dawn began to break, a breathless runner stumbled upon David, his countenance pale with fear. "News has reached the king," he announced, trembling. "Saul has learned of your presence, and Doeg has stirred his wrath against you. They seek you even now." At this announcement, fear swept through David's men like a storm, yet David, undeterred, responded, "The Lord is my light and my salvation, whom shall I fear?" His words bolstered their spirits, and they rallied around him, fortified by unwavering faith. "Let us prepare ourselves," David declared, "we shall not hide in shadows nor cower in fear. The God of Israel goes before us." But even as they gathered their resolve, the harrowing truth lingered in the air. Was this pursuit merely another trial, or was there something deeper at work? In that moment, behind the veil of human plots and schemes, the hand of divine providence steadily unfolded. The trials David faced, the very betrayals that threatened to consume him, were threads in the larger tapestry that God was weaving, a tapestry that foretold glory through humility, compassion through struggle. What awaited David beyond this ordeal? What depths of character would God craft within him? The questions hung heavy, a sacred mystery entwined with the growing shadows. For in the pursuit of his life, the miraculous hand of the Almighty was preparing not only David but also a legacy yet unknown to man. And it came to pass that as David fled into the deep recesses of the wilderness, he felt the pressure of the shadows pressing upon him. Each step further magnified the depths of despair and trials that surrounded his once bright destiny. Yet, amid the troubles laid upon his spirit, God whispered in the silence, "Fear not, for I am with you." It was in this moment of desperate seeking that David, with his heart aligned to the Almighty, discovered a solemn resolve. He would not bend to the pressures of man but cling ever closer to the unchanging nature of God's love. David gathered his weary troops under the canopy of stars, speaking words that sought to anchor their tumultuous hearts. "Brothers, our God is faithful. His promises are as the morning sun, though clouds may arise, the dawn comes unfailingly. We shall stand firm, for we are under the wings of the Most High." These words stoked the embers of hope that had begun to flicker out. His warriors, battered yet steadfast in their bond, held fast to their leader's courage. Then the Lord spoke in the quietness of that night, casting visions of what was yet to come. The winds of divine providence shifted, and a messenger rode into their camp, declaring, "The Philistines invade Israel, and Saul has withdrawn his hunt in desperation for your blood." With astonishment, David grasped the unfolding layers of God's providence, realizing how magnificent his plans were, far beyond the turmoil of man-made strife. Through turmoil, God forged a greater purpose, shifting the sands of conflict into a stage for his ultimate victory. As dawn broke upon the rugged hills, David rallied his men. "Now is the time. Let us move, not toward the wilderness of despair, but towards liberty. For the Lord prepared a way even through our darkest fears." With that, they set forth, their hearts united, David as a shepherd and they as his flock, bound to deliver one another through faith and strength, rooted in the kindness of the Lord. Days turned into weeks, and soon news of victories over the Philistines spread across the lands like fire on dry grass. What seemed to be David's defeat had unfolded into a unique triumph as he acted not just as a warrior but as a leader of the people, intertwining their fates with the call of the Almighty. Anointed king by God, the leader filled the pages of God's story with acts of mercy and valor, empowering his men and bringing light to desolate places. Yet one dark night, the shadows crept back into David's heart as he remembered the hurts unhealed. Armed both with valor and sorrow, he withdrew to a quiet cave, surrounded by the echoes of his past. "O Lord," he cried, "you have brought me through storms and trials. To what end do you guide my steps? Will I ascend the throne destined for me, or will my own past betray me?" As if the heavens themselves heard the cry of a broken heart, a serene peace enveloped him. God's voice whispered gently, "Your kingship was sealed not by man, but by me. Trust in my justice, I will avenge the wrongs against you." In that moment, David understood, the anointing alone would not lift him to the throne. It was the character forged in trials and the compassion imbued in grace that would define his reign. Gentle warmth filled the night air and, stepping from shadow to light, a figure emerged: Jonathan, the son of Saul, steadfast in friendship. "David." He called, embracing the king-to-be. I stand with you, as the Lord has ordained. Saul's mind is clouded, yet God's plan for you shall not be thwarted. The bond they shared was forged in love, transcending the ambitions of their fathers. Encouraged by the devotion of those gathered, David felt the chains of his past loosening, replaced by the assurance of hope and friendship that echoed the divine assurance. He resolved then to live each day tethered to the principles of faith, mercy, and courage that would shape his legacy. As they ascended further towards the throne, whispers of hope spread across the land, invigorating the hearts of the people long resigned to despair. Joy arose from the desolation, for they saw in David a leader who bore the scars of his struggles, yet thrived under the hand of the Lord. And so it was, in the fullness of God's plan and divine timing, David rose to take his rightful place upon the throne of Israel, a shepherd king who embodied the heart of God. His reign was marked by justice and righteousness, as he led his people with a spirit filled with humility forged in the wilderness, a testimony of God's sovereignty fulfilled. Thus concluded a chapter of trials that birthed a legacy of faith. For generations to come would remember David not only as a king, but as a man after God's own heart, whose story echoed truths beyond his own existence, revealing the tapestry of God's unbreakable promises. Beloved reader, let the story of David inspire you to trust even when the shadows loom, to seek God's face amidst turmoil, and to understand that every moment of trial is a brushstroke of his masterful design. If this message has touched your spirit, you need to subscribe immediately to our channel to stay connected to God's Word and not miss the next powerful biblical stories. Leave a like now to help spread God's Word through the algorithm. We want to hear from you in the comments about how this biblical account has impacted your faith journey. This is the moment to help spread biblical truth. Don't wait even one more second to share this powerful testimony with at least 5 friends who need to hear God's truth. Let us lift each other up in faith.